Hi, I'm Terry Cummings. I'm the lead chaplain here with Hermiston Police Department. Well, the Faith in Blue event is an exciting event to us. It's a time when we can bring the faith community and the blue or the law enforcement community together.
Strengthening that partnership between those two groups, our group as law enforcement and the faith-based community, is critical for our success. We also want to show that it's okay to approach an officer to ask a question, especially for our youth. We've had a disconnect over the years with our youth. Our plan is to have our officers present, accessible. We want this to be a kid-friendly event where children will have various activities to do, where families can come alongside the police department and members of the chaplain group.
It's a chance for officers to meet the people that they know, love them and support them. If you want to come and say thank you, we appreciate you to an officer, please do that, because that means the world to these men and women.
Come join us Saturday, October 8th for the Faith in Blue weekend event.
All right, I'm going to call the City Council and Urban Renewal Agency to order with a declaration of quorum. We're going to excuse Councilor Spicer Kuhn this evening. Please join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome this evening. Thank you for joining us. If you walked in kind of in the middle of our last meeting, it was one of the committee meetings that we have. Each of the councilors is assigned different committees, and we had our Public Infrastructure Committee meeting before this. So, Mr. Smith, any changes to the agenda? Okay. We're at our first opportunity for citizen input. If there are items that the community would like to speak to that are not on the agenda, please come up to the microphone at the front to introduce yourself by name and address. Direct your comments to me and try and limit them to less than 5 minutes. Okay. I'm seeing none. Consent agenda items. Any of those need to be pulled, Council? The only question I had, Mr. Smith, was what is a greater privilege application?
So I believe they were going from just beer and wine to offering cocktails.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I didn't want to assume that, so, okay. So we don't need to pull any of those. Any public comment on the consent agenda items A through E? Okay, can I get a motion to approve consent agenda items as presented, A through E?
So moved. Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilor Primer, seconded by Councilor Davis, that we approve consent agenda items A through E as presented. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Motion passes unanimously, 6-0. That Kermit the Frog you heard is Councilor Peterson, and her voice is cracking tonight, so she's going to be a little unique on her voice. 7-0. 7, you're right, 7-0. Did you catch that, Lily? Thank you. So ordinances and resolutions, resolution 2239. Can I just say Eltrez, or do I need to say the whole thing? I'm going to say the whole thing just for the first time. Long-term Rural Enterprise Zone Agreement, PDX 245. Are you going to speak about both of those at the same time? Okay.
Yeah, because the provisions are almost identical.
Okay. What's going on?
So, Mr. Morgan.
Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Mayor. You hit my first point. I was going to mention that it was probably confusing looking at the agenda, potentially seeing two seemingly identical resolutions. But so What we're doing this evening is we're considering 2 agreements with Amazon Data Services, 2 separate agreements for 2 separate data center campuses. Also important to keep in mind that you'll probably remember we have an existing long-term rural enterprise zone agreement in place with Amazon Data Services for a different campus. So it's not like we've renegotiated an existing agreement or anything like that. Both of the agreements before you this evening are 2 new, completely separate agreements. So although the terms are nearly identical, we do have 2 separate resolutions to approve them tonight. So first off, just kind of for some background for any of the newer counselors or anybody who's watching online, I wanted to walk a little bit through some of the background on what the enterprise zone is. So the enterprise zone is a property tax incentive for incentivizing business within the community, authorized by state law. The Hermiston Enterprise Zone originated back in 1996, and we've had a pretty well-used enterprise zone over the years. We've had a number of different users receive that benefit. Corteva Agrisciences, formerly Pioneer Seed, they received an exemption. Shears Foods received a couple of exemptions. Eastern Oregon Telecom got an exemption on their new office building. And then also Lamb Weston, and then Amazon Data Services already has their existing LTRES agreement. Important for folks to keep in mind, the enterprise zone property tax incentive, it's mainly, there's some different programs, but it's mainly only really for industrial style job creators. So it's not something that you can use for a new car wash in town or a fast food place or something like that. So it really is mainly just for what they call traded sector jobs in Oregon. So like I mentioned, there's a few different flavors to the enterprise zone depending on what you're doing. And so the basic enterprise zone, it's really pretty simple. The basic enterprise zone exemption is just a 3-year property tax exemption. All that you have to do in order to qualify for that is if you have, again, a qualifying industrial development, all you need to do is create either 1 job, or if you already are an existing employer within the zone, you have to increase your employment by at least 10% if you're doing an expansion. On the basic zone, there's no minimum income requirements, but again, it's only for 3 years. One of the examples is in 2009, Shears Foods invested $25 million. They only received the 3-year exemption. They ended up adding, by the time things were said and done, around 100 additional jobs, but they were just minimum wage jobs. There was no income requirement on that one. So that was a good opportunity for the basic enterprise zone to get, quite a large number of additional jobs to the community. One of the other ones that we have used is the extended enterprise zone exemption, very similar to the basic 3-year exemption. Again, you just have to create 1 job or increase your employment by 10%. But on this one, if your total compensation package is greater than 130% of the countywide average wage, then you can potentially get this extended enterprise zone, which is really just either 4 or 5 years, depending on how the local zone wants to negotiate that. And so Pioneer Seed, now Corteva, was one of the recipients who had received a 5-year exemption. They had received several of them over the years, but in 2013, they had an $18 million expansion on their plant, and they added about 15 full-time employees, which isn't necessarily a huge number of permanent full-time employees, but at the time, back in 2013, the average compensation for those positions was $75,000 a year. So, different kind of ways of using the enterprise zone for different types of investments and job creators. So then the third one that we have used in the past and what we're talking about this evening is the long-term rural enterprise zone. And so this one has, again, different requirements for qualification. And they also vary depending on which county you're in. So it's very different, here versus, somewhere down in Southern Oregon, depending on the local economics. But so for Umatilla County, in order to qualify for an LTRES, you have to create at least 10 jobs. Again, the compensation has to be at least 130% of the countywide average wage. But you have to invest at least $200 million in a project within the zone. So really targeted for those really, really large scale investments. And so on this one, it allows for exemption to go from 7 to 15 years, but also the LTRES allows you to negotiate fee payments in exchange for receiving that exemption. So the example that we have existing with Lamb Weston in 2017, they invested, by the time things were said and done, they invested $293 million in a plant expansion that added 145 jobs. At the time in 2017, the average compensation was $55,000 a year, and we negotiated a fee with them in exchange for that LTRES tax abatement, because it's a full property tax abatement on all of your new investment, but they pay to the zone $1 million a year, which when you run things out over the course of 15 years ends up coming out to about 40% of what they would have paid in property taxes. So they are paying revenue to local government service providers. It's just a way of lowering that tax bill on very, very large investments. So you may have also noticed over time that I always refer to it as the Greater Hermiston Enterprise Zone. It's greater because we have partners with Umatilla County on the Greater Hermiston Enterprise Zone. In order for a city to be a co-sponsor on an enterprise zone outside of our city limits, we have to have either a county or a port district as our co-sponsor on the zone. And so Umatilla County has been the co-sponsor on the Greater Hermiston Enterprise Zone since 2009 when we had the exemption with Shears. And really, with our LTRES agreements, I think we've really seen a lot of great benefits from that partnership. You'll remember back in 2018, 2019, we completed the new Northeast water tank. Since that time, we've added about 125 new homes in that area. As a result, a lot more planned on the way. Loma Vista Elementary School was able to open and operate because of those water improvements. And we were able to pay for those by leveraging those LTRES fees from our Lamb Weston agreement. And so the city contributed $2.5 million towards that project, and the county contributed $2 million of their portion to the project. So that's been a really great partnership, as well as our partnership on the new City Hall. So the total project on City Hall, Umatilla County is paying nearly 30% of that as a result of being able to contribute some of their LTRES funds towards the project. So that's kind of the background on enterprise zones and the Greater Hermiston Enterprise Zone in particular. With these resolutions this evening, the two agreements before you, as I mentioned, these are for 2 additional LTRES, 2 additional data center campuses. The one existing enterprise zone that we have already approved, we're hopeful should break ground here this fall and be operational sometime next calendar year. So the agreement terms, as I mentioned, they're very, very similar to the existing agreement, plus additional compensation to the zone. So additionally, the terms for each of the agreements are very, very, very similar. They're essentially identical with a couple of minor differences. So the investment, again, it qualifies easily for an LTRES exemption. It exceeds the $200 million. Each campus exceeds the $200 million investment. Each campus will employ more than 10 full-time jobs, and those jobs will exceed currently 130% of the countywide wage is $58,000, and so they'll well exceed that with these new positions. So the actual fees that will be coming back to the zone as a result of the agreement, you'll remember these are all similar terms from our existing agreement. One is the annual improvement payments. We've slightly changed that up a little bit from the way that we calculated it in the existing agreement. Now we will be assessing an annual improvement payment of $5 per square foot that gets constructed every year. However, that AIP payment to the zone will never be less than $2 million per year once they have a building up and completed. At full build-out, that is projected to generate approximately $4.4 million per year just with the AIP payments. Going with the per square footage calculation, it was requested by the company largely because they didn't want to appear as though they were, pulling one over on us or something like that, because as these, the data centers are getting more and more efficient, they're able to get a lot more density in there, and so they're building larger and larger buildings, and so they didn't want to appear as though they were negotiating a fee payment. In our existing agreement, it's just $1 million per building, but with this one, it encourages them to actually build larger buildings. That $5 per square foot, that comes out to basically equal what the existing agreement is if we were charging $1 million per building. So it's very similar to what our existing agreement is. It's just a slightly different way of calculating it that encourages additional building on the sites. And again, so all of these numbers that I'll be going through, these apply equally to each agreement. So what I'm talking about this evening, so when I say projected at $4.4 million per year at full build out, that's for each campus. So that's for each agreement. So if you were to take both of these in total, that'd be $8.8 million per year. Yeah.
And that AIP agreement, is that to the city and to the county?
So no, so the way that we have our LTRES agreement set up is, and this is how our existing agreement is with Amazon Data Services, is they make all of their payments to the Greater Hermiston Enterprise Zone, and I am the zone administrator, and so we have set up a completely separate fund in our budget that is just the Enterprise Zone Fund so that we can more clearly account for those dollars, and so all of those dollars will come technically into the city's budget in the Greater Hermiston Enterprise Zone Fund, and then the city will have agreements with the county on then how to disperse those dollars out of that fund. So the dollars will come to the city, the Greater Hermiston Enterprise Zone, and then we'll direct them out from there. So the next term, which is again similar to the existing agreement we have, is the additional annual fee. And so this is really what I would consider to be a true payment in lieu of taxes, because it's set up as a way of basically charging them a fee that is equal to what they would have paid on an investment of $27.3 million. The reason why we have it set up that way is we're trying to keep it similar to the existing agreement where we had it pegged at $25 million, and then it indexes up at 3% per year. So by the time we've now negotiated this agreement, that's why we have kind of that odd $27.3 million figure as our basis for the calculation. Then additionally, we have the next portion is the minor difference between these two agreements is PDX 245, the first resolution before you. That campus is within the city limits of Hermiston, and the other one, the second resolution before you this evening, that is in the Greater Hermiston Enterprise Zone, but it is actually south of Feedville, so it's outside of the city limits. So with these additional annual fee payments on PDX 245, the city will receive, its share of what, the city's tax would have been on $27 million of value, but on PDX 146, we won't receive anything because we don't levy a property tax out there. So all of the underlying taxing jurisdictions, the school districts, the fire district, the county, the BMCC, all of those taxing entities receive a significant amount of revenue out of this agreement as a result of that additional annual fee. But just wanted to point out the difference between those two. That's what leads a little bit to a difference in the total dollars between the two. Additional component on again, similar to our existing agreements, is the public safety impact fee. That one will start out at about $54,000 per year and increase at 3% per year. Again, the reason it's at kind of an odd number at $54,000 is trying to keep it consistent with our previous agreement that indexes up at 3%, and so now that's where we're at for the public safety impact fee. Again, the intention there being to make sure that we're getting dollars to our public safety providers, Umatilla County Fire District 1, police and sheriff, and those types of services. That's the third balloon that's popped tonight. Brandon assures me they didn't start popping until right before these meetings. So, We should have warned anybody who wasn't here already. Sorry about that. Yeah, so then the last piece, which is, again, a carryover from our existing agreements, is the student success fee. And so this is also set at $54,000 per year, indexing up at 3% per year. And again, this may be one that you get the most questions on from folks in the community or other communities. The reason we set up the student success fee is because the Cook Industrial Site in the south end of the city has been inside of the city limits since the late 1970s. However, it is inside of the Stanfield School District. So Penny Avenue down there forms the boundary between the Hermiston School District and the Stanfield School District. So when we do the additional annual fee, where we're trying to send dollars to all of the underlying taxing jurisdictions, you know, what's fair is fair. Stanfield School District is the school taxing entity that was down there. But at the same time, we know that 90% of the students on this end of the county attend Hermiston High School, or Hermiston School District. So this was a way of getting some additional education dollars back to the Hermiston School District. So for the first resolution before you, PDX 245, that is intended to go to the Hermiston School District. And then the counterintuitive component here is on PDX 146. It's south of Feedville, but it's in the Hermiston School District boundaries. So on that one, the Hermiston School District will get the revenues off of the additional annual fee. And again, you know, since we did it on the other two for Hermiston School District, it seemed appropriate that on PDX 146, that student success fee will go to the Stanfield School District.
Going back to the agreement terms for PDX 245 and PDX 146, for PDX 245, you have $500,000 a year for the valuation, and for PDX 146, it's $400,000 a year, but the amount is the same.
Yeah, so that's what where I was pointing out the fact that the city of Hermiston's permanent tax levy is around $6 per thousand. That doesn't exist at all on PDX 146's site. So the way that this is set up is we're saying we're going to take whatever that tax rate is and apply it on an assumed valuation of $27 million. At the site inside of the city limits, it's about $21 per thousand. At the site south of Feedville, it's $15 per thousand. So that's where you get that difference. So basically, the city just doesn't get any revenue off of that one. So that's where the difference comes in.
Thank you.
Yeah, so those are all of the existing agreements, or very similar to the existing agreement. But then I mentioned there's some additional components that were added into these agreements. The first one being the community development contribution. The company felt very strongly about. They recognize that it takes quite a while to build these things. They're really large, and they build for years. And so while some of those fee payments are large in aggregate, it takes a while to get rolling into those fees. And so they felt very strongly about adding in this community development contribution up front. And so that would be a upfront $5 million payment to the Greater Hermiston Enterprise Zone. The intention is that the partners, the city and the county, would split that fee payment. But that community development contribution would be paid to the zone within 60 days of the start of construction. So it's not within 60 days of this agreement, which is important to keep in mind. It's within 60 days of the start of construction. And then the other thing to keep in mind is the existing campus that we have approved, that one is definitely going to be built first. And so these agreements, they might not start construction on, the first one of these two agreements for a year or 2 years, so those community development contributions definitely appreciate the fact that they're, upfront contributions, trying to get dollars to the zone sooner rather than later. But just for your all edification and keeping in your mind as we go through budget season, that's still several years down the road. Let's see. The other addition. Was there a question?
What's the definition of community development contribution? Is there a definition that comes along with that money?
Yeah, so it's included in the agreement that was in the packet, but basically the community development contribution is paid to the zone, so it's paid to the Greater Hermiston Enterprise Zone, but the only real sideboards placed on it is that that has to be spent on something within the boundaries of the taxing jurisdictions that cover that property. So that's a roundabout way of saying that the company wanted to make sure that that community development contribution, that the partners generally spend it in the vicinity of where the investment was made. So the partners can spend it on
Whatever they want.
whatever,
Okay.
but they tried to put some sideboards on it to say like, well, you know, generally spend it in the Hermiston area. So
Okay. Councilor Brown?
Just had a question on the community development payment up front. Is that per enterprise zone?
yeah, so that's per agreement. Yeah,
Okay.
not per building, but per agreement. So the agreements cover a whole campus, and so.
2 agreements, 10. then?
Yep.
Cool. Okay, thank you.
And then additionally, we added in a $120,000 application processing fee that'll be paid within a certain time period if the agreement is completed. And then really a very large potentially change to the agreement compared to the previous one is the company requested to add in the ability to have their value counted toward taxation with respect to bonds. Specifically, they wanted to really only target things like public utilities, educational facilities, fire facilities, and policing facilities. Those are all specifically called out in the agreement, which I think all makes sense to us. But the request was, you know, we're not going to go, if you guys go vote and want to build a NFL football stadium, we don't want to pay for that. But you know, we feel like those are all, you know, legitimate public services that they wanted to put their value toward. So the way that will work, just as an example, is that, you know, the Hermiston School District had an $82 million bond that they, you know, went out and borrowed. So when they have a bond for $82 million, they have debt service that they have to pay every year. So then they go to the county, the assessor says, well, here's the total taxable value, so now here's the rate that I have to generate this year in order to satisfy your debt service this year based on the total valuation. So with these agreements adding their value to that taxable value and then paying, you know, their portion, what it effectively does is it significantly lowers everybody else's tax rate, because that's kind of why the wording is written that way in the agreement, is because they wanted it to end up being to drive down the cost that all of the other taxpayers pay, with them only making up that margin. So that's a very large difference. But again, that would require, you know, there's no change or benefit unless and until a voter-approved bond passes. So it's not going to retroactively apply to the Hermiston School District's existing bond or, you know, any other bonds. But yeah, so for future bonds or future bond planning, that's probably something for folks to keep in mind.
Mark, what's our current assessed value?
I know the city's total assessed value cleared $1 billion here a few years ago.
And each of these buildings or each of these campuses is $250 million?
They're over $200 million is what they list in the
So
application.
$750 million potentially, or $750 million.
Yeah,
It
it
would
gets up there.
significantly
Yeah.
reduce the,
Yeah.
right?
I'm just listing the numbers that are included in the application materials because the minimum criteria for qualifying is that it has to be at least a $200 million investment, and so those are the numbers that we have. So
That would be a huge benefit to the community if they ran another bond measure, because they would pay for almost half,
yeah,
40%. Wow,
yeah,
that's amazing. And that's new
yeah.
in this agreement.
So that would be new, and that would apply for these 2 additional campuses. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
And again, that's kind of where it's probably important to keep in mind. So if like PDX 245 is located in the Stanfield School District. So that's a big benefit to the Stanfield School District as a result of these things. So it's really spreading a lot of the benefit, around the entire region over here. Let's see. Oh yeah. So then, in your staff report, I was able to come up with a dollar figure in a 2022 dollar. If you take that one-time lump sum upfront payment of $5 million and amortize it over the course of 15 years, at full build-out, each one of those agreements will generate approximately $5 million per year in fees total to the Greater Hermiston Enterprise Zone, which again includes the beneficiaries of that being the sponsors as well as the underlying taxing jurisdictions in the various amounts that they'll get split out at. Reason I bring that up is I was able to go back and we just recently updated the employee counts for our largest employers in the region. Thanks to Lily, she did a great job calling around, took a while. That's a tough number to get to. But so what I went back and looked at was, so these campuses are anticipated to generate approximately 120 new permanent full-time jobs each, paying around $5 million per year. And so I know some folks talk about, what is being given up when you offer a tax incentive, but when you look at the total amount of property tax or fees that they will be paying for local government services compared to our other largest property tax payers, they'll be paying nearly 7 times as much as our current largest property tax payer, which is Corteva. But then when you kind of stop and think about what the purpose is of even levying local government taxes, it's to pay for services, which largely tends to be for people. And so if you divide that number that they're paying by the number of jobs that they're putting in the community, those jobs generally come with kids that need to go to school. It comes with people that are driving cars on our street. It comes with people that have a heart attack and need the police or the fire department to respond, and those types of things. And so when we look at the total amount of fees that they're paying per job, it comes out to around $41,000 per employee. Currently the next highest per employee taxpayer within the city is Pioneer Seed at about $3,200 per employee, and the numbers go down pretty quickly after that. I thought it was interesting that 2 of the 3 current top fee or taxpayers per employee are both prior recipients or current recipients of enterprise zone exemptions. So I just thought that was an interesting additional piece to put in there. So with that, I would stand for any questions. So I guess next steps, is you'll remember we are co-sponsors with Umatilla County. Their next meeting is on October 5th. So Umatilla County will also have to approve this agreement. And then I also wanted to, again, kind of remind folks, the earliest that, we could probably see ground getting broken on the first one of these agreements. Remember, we already have an existing agreement that may break ground, relatively soon. Even if ground breaks on that, in 2024 and they go quick and complete it by 25, based on the way that the agreements are set up, they will pay those annual fees by November 15th of the tax year in which they would have owed those taxes. And so even if they hit that timeline, we wouldn't see those first annual fees on the first one of these agreements this evening until November of 2026. So that's where I say it's great. There's some really great benefits here, but the benefit is still out there in the future ways. So with that, I'd take any questions.
So Mark, I'm assuming there's some language in there. Something goes sideways. They don't build these. Mm-hmm. They're not making a payment. Yeah, so if something is actually constructed. Yeah, so, and I think, they're not making a payment other than the application processing fee. Right.
But that's, again, one of the benefits of having that upfront community development contribution, because, if they only build one building or something, they've made that payment. But additionally, the additional annual fee that we have in there, those ones are on a per square footage basis. That one says, yeah, it's $5 a square foot, but at no point are you going to pay less than $2 million per year on those. So even say they stopped at one building, it still hits at that amount. So.
Yeah, because we had an agreement or a potential agreement with Lamb Weston for another future build out. And the council wisely decided not to allocate or dedicate any of those funds until they actually constructed. Well, we got, COVID, and they didn't build. And so wisely, the council didn't spend the funds that they didn't have in hand. So it's good to keep that in mind when we're thinking about these numbers. They're huge numbers, but at the same point, it actually has to move forward. And they've proven track record in the region, obviously, that they're building these things, but, it's nice to look at, but we also have to keep in mind nothing's actually broken ground anywhere. So.
Yep.
The other comment I was going to make, too, was Oregonian's been beating them up pretty bad lately, the Ultras agreements, and pushing, I think, that these people aren't paying their fair share. So you indicated that Lamb Weston was paying approximately 40% of what they would have paid in property taxes. What do these look like? Did you do a percentage estimate?
No, I didn't run that number on this one.
That'd be good to know, because this seems like this would be a pretty significantly bigger number percentage-wise.
Yeah.
And it looks, to me, like they're paying pretty close to what they would have paid to the local taxing districts.
I think the challenge is getting a value.
Right.
So in some of our further discussions with Lamb Weston, we were able to discover what they had invested, and we would need to be able to know that before we could really make that kind of an analysis.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, because Lamb Weston's, it was originally $225 million, but anytime you're building something, it escalated to 297. So yeah, we can kind of guess now. But
Other questions from the council? Well, I'm excited about some of the additional agreements that you've added in there. I think you've listened to the community. You heard our public safety partners and our school district partners and our taxing community wanting to make sure that we're protecting our local resources, and made some adjustments to that. So, and the opportunity to, have them pay future bonding debt is a huge win for the community as well. So, good job in negotiation of these agreements.
thanks.
All right. So I did not bring my computer tonight. I apologize. So I'm going. Okay, come on up. Please introduce yourself by name, address, and direct your comments to me, and try to keep them less than 5 minutes. Yeah, thank you.
Again, my name is Dave Hansen. I live at 1727 West Alleluia Avenue here in Hermiston. I've just got a couple of questions. First of all, tremendous presentation. Thank you very much for that overview. It was excellent. As a member of the City Budget Committee, I'm delighted to know that we have additional revenues coming in. Right about that. Just a couple of questions. Was there a working group that negotiated the contract, or how was that done?
So that
We take a hard look at the support services needed to take care of what this enterprise zone is doing, as well as having a number of people involved to say, okay, we just don't want the city manager or the city council saying, let's get some input to it. And that's just a recommendation that I would like to make. Matt, thank you very much. And as I said, I'm very excited.
One time, two times, or for the next 25 years, 30 years, or 40 years.
Ms. Smith, you got any?
Well, the
Potential
same answer I
answers?
gave to the mayor on, we don't know what the total value of what they will install. All we know is an estimate of what they say it might cost them. So it's hard right now for us to give a, what would their tax be? In a few years, once they built it, once we can see what it's assessed, we could do an estimate on what would it be.
Okay, if they own property right now, would they be paying taxes on the property until they build?
Correct.
So they'll be paying the full amount?
Yes.
Okay, and then that's when you go into your fees and all of that, or they continue to pay the same amount of what the property tax would be?
Once they start construction and meet the terms of the agreement, then they receive the tax abatement.
Okay, how often can they get the tax abatement?
This agreement lasts for 15 years that we're proposing that the council approve, and we don't, there's really only one time. There's a possibility that they could renew it if they made another large investment. So if they invested another 200,
15 years, it'll come on.
it all goes on the tax roll. So the whatever they did now, 15 years from now, it would be taxed.
Put a number out there. So with this exemption and everything, then they would only pay 40% of that 30 million. Is that how it goes?
Yeah, so again, they haven't provided us with exactly what the total amount is. We're only giving them based on the fact that they meet the $200 million minimum exemption. So that's where, as Mr. Smith mentioned, we don't have what their exact investment is at this point. If we ran those numbers based off of the $200 million minimum investment, it would be significantly more than 40% of what they would have paid on that.
Okay. I
The
think that's
40%
kinda-
number came from the Land Weston
Yeah.
conversation. We don't have a number
Right, for
of
the
what
others.
they're paying for Amazon yet.
Yeah, I understand. I just don't think that 40% that the other companies are going to come in and say, well, we want only to pay 40% as well. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jackie. Any other public comment? Okay. So before the council, Resolution 2239. Can I get a motion to adopt Resolution 2239 and lay it upon the record?
So moved.
Been moved by Councilor Brown, second by Councilor Davis, that we approve Resolution 2239. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Motion passes unanimously, 7-0. Resolution 2240, LTRES agreement for PDX 146. This one was mildly different,
Right.
just from the taxing
It's
outside
because
the
the
city.
city limits, so there's rates involved. It's essentially the same terms.
Okay. Did you have something else to add to that, Mr. Morgan? No. Okay. Any public comment on Resolution 2240? Okay. Can I? Somebody needs. Okay. Somebody online?
Yes.
Do you have a microphone? Oh, there you are. Thank you very much, Ms. Timmons. Appreciate your willingness to work with the City of Hermiston and your partnership as well. So please pass those words along as well. Thank you.
Was she able to hear?
Did she hear that? Okay. All right, any other public comment? Okay, Resolution 2240, are there any, or can I get a motion to adopt Resolution 2240 and lay it upon the record?
So moved. Second.
It's been motioned by Councilor Davis, or motion by Councilor Primer, second by Councilor Davis, that we approve Resolution 2240. Roll call.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously, 7-0. Umatilla River Bridge Report, Mr. Smith.
Yes, so the Public Infrastructure Committee had a discussion about this project earlier, and we kind of went into a little more detail, but I'm going to ask Mr. Morgan to give you a summary request for action.
Yeah, so I'm glad I didn't get laryngitis tonight like Councilor Peterson, because I've been talking for like 3 hours. So anyway, but I'm back. Here I am again. So yeah, just again, I'll kind of go through it a little bit more quickly than what we did with the Public Infrastructure Committee. But in general terms, the city's transportation system plan has had 2 bridges called for on our TSP for about the past 20 years, going over the Umatilla River, either at Elm or at Pumpkin Center. We've always known that it's going to be very expensive to build a bridge. It's, you know, that's the nature of those types of things. And so when we really started long range looking at how are we ever going to potentially make a run at getting some funding for something like this, we really realized that you have to pick a pony first before we really start going out and, you know, asking for legitimate amounts of funds. Either that, or we're going to spend twice as much money doing really in-depth engineering work on 2 options when really, you know, only one is the one that we need to look at. So we began conversations with our partners at Umatilla County as well as the City of Umatilla because we feel like a bridge over the Umatilla River greatly benefits both communities as well as the entire county. And so we got with them and with our engineering firm with Anderson Perry to essentially develop this preliminary engineering report to look at both options at a relatively high level. They brought on a sub-consultant for a traffic impact analysis and look at what the traffic flow was and impacts there. And ultimately, they came out with a recommendation on total costs of both options, and then got back together with the partners, internal staff from the City of Hermiston, staff with Umatilla County, and staff with the City of Umatilla to discuss, okay, based on the cost estimates and everything involved in the report, what do you recommend as far as the preferred option? And really all 3 of the partners definitely agreed that the option of bridging near where an extension of Pumpkin Center Road is definitely the preferred option. There's a number of reasons for that. One is it is technically less expensive overall, but additionally it's a lot more scalable. Without getting into the details of the report, the Pumpkin Center Road option, it's easier to phase out into future phases. You can just tie right into River Road without going up the hill and making improvements to Pumpkin Center, if that's the choice. The other option, you're immediately running into having to upgrade signals at 395 and Elm, or First and Elm, and so a lot more costly upfront components to that other option. Also, the Pumpkin Center option provides a much more direct connection to Interstate 82. I think that's really where just a lot of and that's what the traffic impact analysis showed. That's really a lot of where the traffic is coming and going from. It's just a lot more direct route there. And then also just the nature of the development pattern out in that vicinity. It's currently all outside of the urban growth boundary. The Umatilla River is our UGB, but if we're looking really long range at developing bridges, that type of thing, looking at the development potential for property along an extension that follows Country Lane, which would be the Pumpkin Center extension, it just sets up a heck of a lot better for future development. Fewer individual property owners, the parcels are a lot larger for accommodating large-scale development right there next to the freeway. So I think there's those first few components are important, but then that's kind of the intangible economic development component that I think really tips it toward my favor is with the Pumpkin Center option. And then finally, the Pumpkin Center option, it is twice as far north from the existing bridge that we already have over the Umatilla River. Elm Avenue is only about 1 mile from Highland, which that's where our existing bridge is, and we know that a lot of that traffic is coming down on I-82, or it's coming from Umatilla and then just looping back up and around. So we would almost be creating just really like a redundant bridge if we were to use the Elm Avenue option. The Pumpkin Center location really creates a completely different node and entry point into the city for really allowing future growth of the city. So that's where I say the recommendation from the working group between city, county, and City of Umatilla staff was to go with the Pumpkin Center road option. The MOU before you this evening is just simply to memorialize that general understanding between the three partners, because ultimately long term I see all three of these partners coming together for, you know, asking for funding to actually construct it. And so we want to make sure that all three of us are lockstep in saying, yep, we're starting off, like, we're going to pick which one we're going to go for first, and then we're going to proceed and start looking for funding. So that's the other important piece here is we're not looking at actually building this thing anytime soon, but we got to start by picking which one we're going to go after some funds for. So from a fiscal impact standpoint, all you're doing is saying, yep, that's the option that we would like to start putting forward and start putting effort toward receiving additional funds for in the future. So the MOU, Umatilla County has already approved it at their side, and the City of Umatilla is slated to approve it on their side either this week or next week, and then we would just simply include that in the engineering report just kind of for posterity so that we have that. So with that, I'd stand for any questions.
Council, do you have any questions about the recommendation? Councilor Brown?
Yeah, so by going along with the Pumpkin Center option, that would mean that Pumpkin Center from 207 all the way through would more than likely have to be approved. Would that be on the county, or?
So you mean 207 on the east side?
Yeah.
Or, yeah.
Well, the entire length of it's going to have to be, because Pumpkin Center is not a road that's best suited for truck travel.
Yeah.
And it will be being used as a bypass for sure.
Yeah.
So that road will definitely need a serious amount of improvements, especially a couple of the Wahoo Hills that are on there.
Yeah, so I think what you're referring to is the fact that Pumpkin Center goes all the way out and connects up at Diagonal Road out there at 207. And so, yeah, we looked at that, quite a bit. The right-of-way really isn't there for widening it. It would get really expensive, mainly, especially there between 395 and 207, that eastern half of Pumpkin Center. But we talked a lot with ODOT early on in this analysis of, would ODOT take, this over if we were to, put this bridge in? And so they really weren't interested in taking that over. I think when we look at the truck movements in the area here, we have Highway 730 that connects up to Interstate 82, and then we also have Highway 207 that comes down and connects up. I think you're right. I think we will see some additional truck traffic using it. I think it just kind of diffuses it a little bit more. I don't know if it's going to be the default assumption for truck traffic, but that was what the traffic engineer's recommendation was, basically.
Knowing truck traffic, they're going to take the shortest, easiest route, and that's going to be the shortest, easiest route. Whereas if we do the extension off of Elm, it's already built for that, and then any building onto Elm could be basically built into the system.
Yeah, and
I get the moving it forward part of it. I understand that part, but to me, it seems like that's going to create a lot of problems on Pumpkin Center.
Yeah, and so that was what the traffic impact analysis really focused on was. So the Pumpkin Center option, potentially having additional trucks on it is one thing, but the intersection of Elm and 395 already is nearing failure point. Like ODOT's aware of that, and so it was determined that really, if they're both going to see additional truck traffic potentially going through, either that intersection of Elm and 395 or taking Pumpkin Center, it's a heck of a lot more expensive you're likely acquiring expensive commercial real estate on several corners of that intersection to upgrade that intersection to accommodate the additional traffic. So that was one of the reasons for that.
Councilor Brown?
Just a comment. I saw this hit the press about the potential of where we were going to pick and what the study ended up resulting in. So I decided to drive out to both Elm and Pumpkin Center. And the biggest surprise to me was I thought it was Pumpkin Center. I didn't know it was Pumpkin Center. So it took me a while to learn. So it's Pumpkin Center. And now I'm good with that.
Any other questions from the council? So, Mark, you're asking for authorization for me to sign a memorandum of understanding, and that's between us, the county, and City of Umatilla. Is that right?
Yep.
That we all agree that that's the best location for that.
Yeah, and really the only thing that we're committing ourselves to is that on future transportation system plan updates, that we recognize on those updates that this is the option that we'd like to choose. It's not obligating us to say, if all of a sudden the county wants to go ahead and build it, then we got to split the cost of building something with them. So all of those conversations are well down the road.
Okay, good. Any other questions? Well, I, for one, am looking forward to getting truck traffic out of town. I think that's one of the #1 complaints I get about traffic in town is all the truck traffic. So if that would alleviate some of the truck traffic, but I agree with you, Pumpkin Center will need some improvements. Okay, so you have in front of you a resolution tonight, or I guess a MOU, that you're authorizing the mayor to execute the memorandum of understanding as presented. Any public comment on that? Okay. Can I get a motion to approve that?
So move.
Second.
I think that was Councilor Davis, seconded by Councilor Barone, that you authorize the mayor to execute the memorandum of understanding as presented. Roll call.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
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 Motion passes 6-1. Councilor Bremer in the negative. All right, August 2022 financial report. Mr. Kay, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. And I apologize being so late in the month for the August report, but the first of the month, we couldn't get the timing right to meet that council meeting. We meet the second week, and when the calendar's like it is, sometimes it's the second meeting of the month we have to do it. August, I always start with the Urban Renewal Agency. We finally got some money from the county, $883 in August. We round everything up to the 1,000. The one expense that was paid this month was interest expense on the debt that URA has. Nothing exceptional going on with the Urban Renewal Agency. General fund, actual revenue transfers were $3,000,001. We projected 2.8. That's a positive variance of 10.53%. Right now, we stand at $730,000 above projected for the year. I want to give a caveat to that. I did not want to put an asterisk on that explanation, but we are working on 2 years of COVID activity, historical precedents for how we develop our projected numbers. So there are going to be some swings month to month based on those averages of the prior 3 years. So that looks like, wow, we're really bringing in money. I can't say that's the case. Based on what we projected, it does. But historically, we'll just have to see. It will work its way out as the years go by. Fund expenses for the month were $1,006,000, $200,000 more than projected of $1,452,000. That's 13% for the month, but only 4% negative versus the year, which for me, for 2 months into the year, we're within 4.4% of our projected total for the year. After 2 months, I think that's pretty good. So the expense side might hold up a little better than the revenue side. General fund department, we had some things happen that I think are due to pent-up demand. For one, I'm going to apologize for the finance department. We're $8,000 over our budget, but we had 2 salaries in August. We had one person on the cusp of retiring. We had a second person hired that month to learn the ropes before she retired. That number will go down for the rest of the year. In the transportation, airport, parks, pool, And recreation, we had transportation, so it had a lot more expenses, people using the system. Airport had another fuel purchase. Parks and pool, they had outstanding attendance and programs that drove the expenditures. And then recreation, a lot of kids were involved in programs. Those will drop off a bit now as we get through the summer season. But again, we're right now in the general fund departments only 2.4% over our projection for the year to this point. Fund balance at the end of August is almost $5 million, which is 2.18 times the minimum reserve requirement of $2.2 million. Sitting pretty good. We look at all of our utility and street funds. Street fund, utility fund, and HES. HES is catching up on some stuff as far as their expenditures. The street fund, historical projections, we did not get some money last year that we haven't gotten this year at the same time. We will continue to have a regional water issue on resources. And I won't mention that anymore because that's an issue with Shearers being out of commission. But everything else is looking pretty good. Only 3 updates to the capital projects report. You've heard about the North First Place reconstruction when we had the Public Infrastructure Committee meeting. There's going to be a lot of stuff going on North First Place in the next 24 months. Any specific questions you might have, I would direct to Mr. Morgan, who's more versed in what's going on. We also have lift station number 6. Contractors mobilized on site the first week of August and been working with closures to North First Place going on right now. If you've driven through that intersection, you've seen that. And then lift station number 3, contractors remobilized and begun digging the pits to start boring through under the railway right-of-way. And I'll finish up with City Hall. We are virtually at the finish line. I thought it'd be nice, I have been taking pictures from the day we started demolishing City Hall to the day I took that picture for my father-in-law. He's a frustrated civil engineer, never got his degree. Somehow or other, Korea got in the way and he was in the service. But he says, send me pictures. So I'd go out once a week over the whole period we've been building. I tried to. April 9th, you see the big hole in the grounds from the alley looking back to the library. July 22nd, you see things going on, same angle. September 9th, you see the walls going up, the substructure. November 19th, that's one picture I thought showed a pretty good picture from the corner back behind Carnegie over by Harkenrider. And then September, almost the same angle, we actually see the finished facade. But we're pretty much at the finish line. If I'm to believe what Mr. Smith has told us, we're moving October 5th. Well, I saw a big semi unloading furniture today. So I'm like cracky, I think he's right. And with that, I'd be glad to stand any questions.
Council, any questions about the finance report? Seeing none, thank you, Mr.
Thank
Kay.
you.
Any public comment on the August 2022 financial report? Seeing none, can I get a motion to accept the August financial report as presented?
So moved.
Councilor Harden, motion to accept the August financial report, and it was seconded by Councilor Primer. Roll call?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously, 7-0. Mr. Smith, approval of July 1st, 2022, July to June 30th, 2025 collective bargaining agreement with Hermiston Police Association.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, really glad to have this agreement in front of you tonight. We had a unique situation in our bargaining where each side had hired a new representative, and I think we kind of went through a little bit of getting to know you activities between those two representatives. But I think we also ended up with a good agreement. I think the city was able to get some things that we wanted, and I think the association is satisfied or pleased with the items that we were able to increase some of their compensation and make some other changes as well that they were interested in. I'm going to give a quick summary. We probably changed every one of the articles in the contract this time, which is not a typical thing. But I'm just going to try to hit the high points and not go through. A lot of it was just clarification. Some of it was modernizing it to what current case law is, things like that. So starting in Article 5, kind of talking about, I believe that's the vacation section, just made some clarifications on how we handle the fair parade and the Umatilla County Fair so that it was more clear about how that, there's a lot of overtime and sometimes it needs to be required overtime. And so we just want to be clear with the process so both sides know how that's going to take place each year. Article 6, we made a clarification. Our health insurance benefits are really dictated to us by CIS. I mean, we could obviously try to go outside of that. I think that's not the best financial decision. But anyway, just as if our health insurance benefits were to change, we've set up some language where we both take a look at it and see if it is a major change and something that we need to reopen the contract and negotiate over wages and benefits. And then if not, if it's just a minor change, then we don't have to go through that reopening process. Then Article 7 is the deferred compensation. We increased our match available to members of the association. So we were before matching 2% up to $5,000, and now the proposal is 4% up to $7,500. And so I think encouraging the association to save and prepare for retirement is a good thing. Article 10, they wanted some changes related to how we select if an internal candidate from a non-sworn position applies for a sworn position. We just clarified how that process would work. Article 16 is the main compensation section, and what we're proposing for tonight is a 4% in this first year, 3% and 3% in the following 2 years of the contract. In addition to that, we also agreed on a $1,500 per member payment to those employed at the time of the beginning of the contract, and this would be kind of proposed out of our ARPA dollars. It's something that we can utilize those funds for. We also made a number of changes to some of the specialty pay items that the association members are able to get. We changed many of them from set dollar amounts to percentages, and then set a cap for what the most they could get from those specialty pays. Excuse me. Then Article 25 is the holiday pay. We originally had proposed or talked about adding Juneteenth as a holiday because of its designation as a federal holiday. But through our discussions, what we came to is currently the holiday pay is kind of a convoluted, the way it's set up is kind of convoluted, difficult to administer. So what we did, we left that section as it was, and agreed to kind of a working group with myself and the chief and the association to work out something that is a little easier to administer, but also addresses the the needs of time off for our officers. And then the final article that had a major change is we added the language in the contract only said something about lenses on replacing glasses, and so we added frames to that, set a cap for if somebody's glasses are damaged in the while they're working. And then we also were able to add hearing aids to that section as well if they're damaged, and set a cap on that as well. So that's a summary of the major changes, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So the $1,500 ARPA fund, that's just a one-time payment, right? It wasn't an addition to their salary.
It's just a one-time payment.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions from the council? Yeah, Councilor Brown?
Just a comment and a question. I really do like the educational incentives that are in the contract. I also like the bilingual incentives that are in the contract. I think that's great to recognize and not only also encourage more of your staff to either be more educated or learn another language. I really wish this is something the Hermiston School District would do, honestly. I do have a question, and it was something you actually brought up already about Juneteenth. That was the first thing that I saw that was a little glaring, other than everything else. Everything else seemed fine. But I wonder, I know it was just a recently established federal holiday, but I think if we are making that commitment to diversity, change, and inclusion, I think this is something that as a city we should value, of celebrating, taking the time and celebrating this day. So I don't know if that's something that requires a motion right now, or if that's something that you're going to have in discussion.
Let me share with what we're looking to go away from is probably naming all of the holidays and setting up basically some sort of a paid time off that would include vacation and holiday pay, and set it at the levels that they are, with potentially some increases, but would not name all of the holidays going forward. Now, once we're done with the contract language, then we usually turn towards the employee handbook that governs the rest of the employees, and we would definitely be looking at potentially adding that as a holiday in that section. But I would prefer, if I could request, that you give us some time to talk about this and work through it, and we would probably be back with a section that doesn't include any holidays named. It just allocates time off for them. So.
Understood. And for me, I guess it was just more of recognizing the historical relevance of what that date has to offer. And I understand contractually you might do something different, but I think as a city, it's something that we should recognize and should be on the front end rather than on the back end.
Well, we'll definitely be working on that as far as the remainder of our employees and the employee handbook. So,
Mr. Smith, as far as the wage increases, the 433, I understand public safety is pretty difficult to recruit right now, and so does this help in retention? Does it make it competitive? How are we regionally, appropriately, compensating these individuals?
All of our comparisons that we did in our work in preparations for negotiations from the management side indicate that we are leading. We're in a good position, particularly in our area of the state, but even as we look at comparators, similar sized city, not in the metro area, across the state, and we're still competitive and doing well in that way.
Good, thank you. Any other questions, comments from the council? Mr. Myers, did you want to say anything? Nothing? Okay. Any public comment on the collective bargaining agreement with Hermiston Police Association? Yes. Come on up. Thank you.
I just had a question about the $1,500. Are you guys treating that as a retention bonus? Or you're not labeling it as that?
Technically, we labeled it as a signing bonus, but it is basically acknowledging that they all were working over the past few years during difficult times.
I think it's a good deal. They deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Any other public comment? Yes, Jackie.
Jackie Linton, Hermiston, Oregon. I just wanted some clarification on the holidays. Right now, how many holidays are there? And is Dr. Martin Luther King one of the holidays? And also, when you say get away from naming holidays, what do you mean by that? It's going to be January 20th. You're just off because it's a holiday, President's Day. You won't call it President's Day. You'll just call it you're just off for that day because it's a holiday, an unnamed holiday. I just want clarification.
Yeah, so because police officers work holidays, we have had them named in the contract, but what we do is we just give them a bank of leave to use throughout the year. And so what we're thinking, again, if the association agrees and we can come to something, is that we just give them a bank of leave and we acknowledge that they work holidays and we do certain things in how the compensation works, so it's still fair, but it just gets problematic when you name a holiday and then some of them work, some of them only work the 8 to 5 kind of Monday through Friday schedule, and so they would get different types of holiday pay, and it just gets really complicated. So we're trying to come up with a way that's a little bit more straightforward in how, and so then in the contract we wouldn't name any dates, we wouldn't name any holidays, we would just allocate, they get this much leave.
Okay, so for Juneteenth then, it would be, monies would be allocated or time off allocated if they wanted to take that day off? Because I do know normally you go by seniority whether or not you're going to be working a particular holiday or the staffing needs so many people will be there. I know it's a recently accepted federal holiday, but this holiday has been celebrated for over 156 years. So it's not something that is not known, it's well known in this country.
Well, I understand that, and we don't right now have all federal holidays in our time off. So, for example, Columbus Day is not in our union contract. It's not in our days off for other employees. So, this is just this is a common practice in other organizations that you just give time off versus naming specific holidays. You would combine holidays and vacation, other types of leave, and give a bank of leave, and then they utilize it. And so we're exploring this idea. Maybe it will fail, and maybe we come back and tell you that we want to add Juneteenth. I'm confident. I'm optimistic that we can find something that's a little bit easier to administer.
As I understand it, it's not invalidating
No.
the value of the importance of those days in historical value. It's an administrative decision because these individuals have to work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So it just gives the ability to be more flexible with the time and them to use it differently, not taking away the value of each of those holidays and their importance that they are to our society. Okay, thank you. Any other public comment? Okay. So can I get a motion to adopt the proposed changes to the collective bargaining agreement with the Hermiston Police Association?
So moved.
Been moved by Councilor Primer, second by Councilor Davis, that we approve the July 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2025 collective bargaining agreement with the Hermiston Police Association.
I just have a clarification. Yeah, I have a point of clarification, and it's going to impact my vote, but if we're saying we're having these conversations, when are these conversations going to come back to council?
I can't give you 100% guarantee on that, but Friday we're going to have the first discussion with both groups together about it.
So your question is regarding the time off?
Yes.
Okay, so as it is currently, the contract didn't change as far as time off goes?
For holidays,
For
correct.
Yeah. No, and again, I understand the argument being made, but it does, for me, it does, even though it won't be acknowledged for what it is, or I know we're having this conversation, but at least even the hours of time off also for that particular holiday, even if it ends up being a bank or however you guys do it. But I think it does need some recognition. I was just wondering when that conversation was going to be had and if that was going to be made sometime soon.
I said, we'll start that conversation this coming Friday, and hopefully it moves quickly, and then we can come back with an amendment to the contract.
Okay.
But both sides agreed. They were interested in more time off, and we were interested in having Juneteenth be a part of this, but we wanted to use this as an opportunity to improve kind of some of the other parts of this leave discussion.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Roll call.
Yes.
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 Motion passes unanimously, 7-1. Please pass along our appreciation to the association, and we appreciate you representing them and working hard to, negotiate with the city for, these important members of our employee team. And so thank them for all their hard work, and thank you for representing them. All right, on to committee and liaison reports. Who wants to go first? Nobody? Did anybody have any meetings? Yeah,
Yes.
Mr. Broom?
Yes, so I had 2 meetings, one of which I can't really comment too much on, but I was very excited to be a part of, was the Community Accountability Board. We did meet up again this last Thursday. We did have one student that we talked about. Again, I can't really disclose other than that, but it was a great experience. It's made of 2 school board members, 2 council members, and a community member at large. So it was a great discussion, a great process, and I'm happy to be a part of it, and happy that we had our first discussion for our first student. So it was great. Hoping to hear.
First time in like 3 years, right?
Yeah, I think COVID did have a huge impact on that.
Exciting that is back together.
Mm-hmm.
I look forward to more meetings.
Yeah.
So it was really great, and props to Officer Nawa. I know she's not here, but she was the one running the meetings, and she did a great job. We also had a Hispanic Advisory Committee conversation this past Monday about the Hispanic Resource Center. We had our library director, Mark Rose, present. We talked a lot of different things, a lot of different details, and basically we just wanted feedback from the committee and the community that was present. What type of things they would like to see in this resource center, what things would be inviting, appealing to people, would make them want to come out and bring more ownership into that new space. There was talk about, it was a good point from the committee about after hours or even evening hours concerns. I know that the library is open now until like 8 p.m., but there's still a lot of our population, especially during the summer, that doesn't get off until much later. So that was just kind of a discussion, but the fact that I think the library just this last year extended their hours made that a lot nicer. But that's still one of the things that we were talking about. And other than that, access to technology, but in terms of like how to actually use a lot of the technology, like how to send an email, how to navigate through Synergy, like if you're a parent and need to like understand your kids' grades, and just a lot of navigation. So that's kind of a resource that we're wanting to talk about, but not only in Spanish, but also in English. I think that's a need in the community to be able to fully utilize the technology that we have, because, I mean, technology keeps changing over and over again. Soon I won't even know what's going on. But those were the 2 committees that I have to report on.
You, I think, just publicly said, I really look forward to more meetings. Did you really just say that?
I'm a glutton for punishment.
On the record? All right, we need to get you involved in some more committees, it sounds like. How about other committee reports? I will talk about the Public Infrastructure Committee since my partner over there, Ms. Peterson, can't speak very well this evening. So we had a Public Infrastructure Committee meeting right before this one. We talked through the bridge projects. One thing that Mr. Morgan, I don't know that he notated in there, but it's actually been in our transportation system plan since 1997. So we've been talking about this for 25 years now. So looking forward to, hopefully the future of that and seeing that happen. We talked about the North First Street reconstruction project, really kind of focusing on the impacts that's going to make to those businesses and residences along that street. And so we looked at some of the parking impacts due to the widening of the roads and the sidewalks and the impacts that's going to make to those people. Mark said Heather's going to go out and contact each of them and give them a brochure that tells them about what's going on with the project and give them some information about the impacts that could happen to their business. And so that's going to start, was that next week? Yes, she's going out next week. And that project should go out to bid in November with street construction starting in 2023. Lift Station 3 and 6 we talked about a little bit. They're finishing Lift Station 6. It's pretty close to being done. Lift Station 3, because of the delay in boring under the railroad tracks, it got pushed back a little bit. They had to do some special investigation of just exactly what it is that they're borrowing through, so should know that potentially next week. But that has pushed that lift station project back. Hopefully get it done by November, but it may be pushed back into the spring just because of the paving issues. And we talked a lot about the regional water system and the impacts that Amazon's making in that area out there on the south side of town, and trying to get them access to water. So they will pay for an extension of the potable water line that we currently have that we ran out towards Oregon State Extension, and they will pay to extend it all the way out to Penny? What's that road? Campbell. Yes, Kelly. Okay. Pave it all, or they will pipe it all the way out there temporarily until we can build out a full non-potable line from the regional water system, so that they'll all three be able to hook into eventually. But the city will be able to retain that extended water line for future development out there. And that bid is going out in November as well, as with a potential spring build. And then we also talked about capital instruction plan, or capital infrastructure plan. We do a 2-year update, and that update is coming up again in January. And so it'll come before the committee in the next 3 months, and then in front of the council, Mr. Morgan thought, by the first of the year. Anything else I missed in there? Okay. Any other committee reports? Okay. Mayor's report. I went to the aging, or I'm sorry, the addressing homelessness. What was it called? Addressing homelessness in public spaces. Held by the LOC. They're doing 4 across the state and 1 regional, or 1 Zoom meeting. And so Hermiston got to host the one in Eastern Oregon. And so it's pretty well attended. We had about 30 members of the region attend. And we just talked through status of the current law that's in front of us, both federal, state. We didn't really talk about local because each of our communities is different, but the impacts of the federal and the state laws, just kind of as a refresher to those of us that were present on where we're at and the laws that are governing homelessness and how we work with those individuals and trying to find them some empathetic solutions. And then we talked through some recent changes in state law that's requiring us to have some place for them to stay. And if they they can't be on public spaces, then where do they stay? And so we're trying to work through those as individual communities, and we currently have a place or a process in place working with our 4 West Umatilla County partners, or West partners, on the PATH project, which will be our way of kind of identifying that. And so we talked through just recent state law changes. And then we also went around and kind of brainstormed about concerns or issues. And it's interesting to hear, because we had communities from as far away as like 6 hours, and small communities of like 250 people versus Hermiston, which we did have somebody out of the metro area, Clackamas, I think. So, we were one of the larger cities, and how we're, having situations and what sort of situations that people are dealing with. And, as part of my OMA, the Oregon Mayors Association Homelessness Task Force, I get to hear how other communities are addressing homelessness and the challenges that they're finding. And it's unique to hear each of the communities differently, because some of them are rural and, they're irrigated deserts like us, and some of them are mountainous, and some of them are coastal, and people find unique ways to camp in all different places. And so being able to manage those, I think, was interesting, and the barriers and the barriers and challenges that each of the communities has. So very good conversation. We continue to talk across the state on ways of humanely addressing our homelessness and trying to provide them with some additional resources. And I think the LOC is trying to partner with other municipalities, counties, specifically some of the metro areas, to try and come up with some legislative addresses this year for some homelessness solutions. So just all part of that process that we're kind of going through before the 2023 session. But it was a good conversation. I think there was about 6 hours worth, wasn't it? Something like that. Did you have anything you wanted to add? Councilor Peterson was also there from Hermiston.
I will try and squeak my way through this. What I appreciated was that we had some individuals that had worked their way out of homelessness, and to hear that perspective, because quite often the reports we hear are from the individuals that get brought to our attention, not the people that actively stay below the radar, because that's a particular skill set, and those are the people that you don't hear that fit the stereotypes. And what I heard a lot of was the stereotypes, not the people that might come into my office at the college that are living in tents and they need access to services, but they're still college students. Those aren't the homeless people that we think of. And so there are a lot of stereotypes out there, because those are the people that we notice, but there are a lot of people that we don't notice. And so those are the people that don't get counted when we think of the homeless population. Those are the unhoused. And so it was good to share those perspectives and hear from the other individuals, because there's a lot of misconceptions out there about who the homeless population is and who they aren't. And I think that conversation gets lost.
Mandy Seeley was how did she identify herself? The lived experience person that was there and spoke, and she did a very good job. And so it was nice to have somebody that had been homeless, that had grown out of it, and now is facilitating and working with the homeless populations to help them learn from her experiences and how she was able to get out. So it was impactful when you hear from a person with actual street cred, that can speak to the issue. So, but very good conversation. And so I would encourage you guys, I know many of you are going to the League of Oregon Cities Conference here in a week, next week, starting next Tuesday. So many of you will be going to that. I would encourage you to continue to participate in those conference opportunities that are available there. City Hall grand opening. I saw it announced. It's going to be from 3 to 6. Is that right?
3 to 7.
3 to 7.
6:30, we're going to have
6:30.
the actual ribbon cutting.
And 7 o'clock city council
7 o'clock
meeting.
city council meeting.
Okay. So expectations for the council, 6:30.
Yeah.
Perfect. Please put that on your calendar. Try and be there for the ribbon cutting at 6:30. How about other stuff from the council? Any council comments? Yes.
Well, I wasn't here last week.
Okay, Ms. Duran raised her hand to be recognized.
It's okay.
Ms. Duran?
I just want to say that I am very thankful for Good Shepherd and all of the vendors that were at Hermiston High School that helped put on the health fair. I think it allows many people that otherwise probably would not set foot in a clinic or don't even know of the type of services available to them. So it was, I wasn't there, but based on the pictures that I saw, it looked like a good turnout. So I certainly know that whenever they've had the health fair and they brought the vehicle and the dentists that come in and do the work, that has helped a lot of people that otherwise would not have an opportunity to go see a dentist. So much appreciation for that. I also liked the video, and I know, Chief Hermiston, that you don't like being on a spotlight, especially in front of a camera, but I thought you did an excellent job, as well as Mr. Cummings. So Faith in Blue event is being promoted right now, and it's going to take place on October 8th. So, and there's going to be a carnival also that weekend, right? Yes, at EOTech. But the video that was created was to promote the Faith in Blue. So whoever helped put that on did a great job. Thank you for doing that.
Brandon, there's a lot going on that weekend. Faith in Blue event, barbecue.
Yeah, barbecue contest.
And
some family activities. Brandon, do you have a better rundown?
Yeah, family, kids activities for the Faith in Blue event. EOTech is doing the dueling pianos.
Dueling pianos, that's what it was.
Other family activities in their event as well.
Okay, so that's this weekend up at EOTech. I think it's 8th, 9th?
Next weekend.
Next weekend. 8th, 9th, 10th, something like that?
Yeah.
And the Faith in Blue event is?
Faith in Blue is October 8th.
8th? Okay, we have hours?
11 a.m. to 4 p.m.
Okay, perfect. Any other comments from council? Yes?
I've just had some good community comments on Getman Road being chip sealed. It's been like that for a while, but I've had a lot of teachers now that the school year started, and they're like, this is the route that I'm taking from here on out. So I think that was a county-city partnership, or I don't know if that was just solely the county on that one.
Just the county. I'd love to take credit for it, but.
Shout out to the county. Thank you.
Lisa, do you have anything to talk about representing all your advisors today?
Hey, I actually do have quite a few things to say. I'm
Okay.
sorry. I know everybody has been saying like a lot of things, but like a lot is going on right now for the high school. It's homecoming week. We have Spirit Days going on really strong. I saw a couple people dressing up as their favorite movie characters today. That was interesting. A lot of Harry Potter, which might be a reference to the play that the theater department is going to be having called Puffs. It's based on Harry Potter, but it's from the view of the Hufflepuffs instead of the main character Gryffindors. But yeah, it's homecoming week. We have the big game this Friday. We're going to have, from what I've heard, the fireworks show during halftime again, and the homecoming court is going to make their appearance. The band is going to be playing pep tunes for the first half, but we're going to be gone after halftime because we're getting ready to go to Cavalcade on Saturday, sadly, because that's the same day as homecoming. We're going to be gone all day, which means that we are making our own meals, and because concessions are not cheap at Cavalcade, they have to raise money for all what's happening. We're going to be going against a lot of Pacific Northwest bands, mainly in the Washington area, so that's not including the Oregonian high schools. Maybe a few, I'm not sure. I haven't seen the roster too closely. But there are signups for food donations on the Hermiston Band Boosters Facebook page. You can reach out to Diane McClure, who is the head of that, or I think it's Diane McClure, yes. But other than that, the high school is starting to have bilingual students, help students learning English as their second language with classwork that they struggle with, and this is taking place during I&E, which is like a study hall period on Wednesdays, and it's about 30-40 minutes of a class period compared to the 90-minute classes. This actually really helps the Hispanic students because it helps them get to know more people around the school that could help with any language barriers that could potentially be taking place in the class. And this also helps with the students that are helping them because it's a place where they can refine their Spanish speaking, or where they can practice, with more of that academic speech, instead of just like, hey, how's it going? Like, you excited for the parties again? No, they're actually, like, in there, we're actually talking about, like, math, physical science, biology, family health care. So it's a nice new thing. I'm part of it. Yay! And a couple of my friends are too. And the students that are getting picked for it are recommended by the teachers. So if there are any students watching right now, talk to your teachers about it because it's really fun and it's really nice to help people. But also the choir is fundraising using the dueling pianos, the barbecue competition weekend. There's flyers that Mrs. Jordan Bemrose handed out to the choir students. And on this flyer, there is a QR code in the corner where if you buy, I think it's the full weekend ticket, part of the money will go to the choir program because they don't have a boosters. Because the band has their boosters, the sports for the high school have boosters, but the choir doesn't. We do that fundraising on our own. And we also get money from the school, but lots of times we end up doing fundraising or we end up paying for the trips ourselves, and these kinds of things do end up expensive, especially for things like hotels for overnight trips or going into competitions or doing, what's the name? It's like classes, but we get to be working with collegiate level professors for choir, and seeing as we're starting to go more into collegiate level music, for her advanced choirs, that kind of stuff is helpful for us. So we're fundraising with that. Also, the Majesty, the jazz choir, is going to be singing the anthem like we did at the Kiwanis Kids Day for the homecoming game before they start. So, yay! That's pretty much it. Well, Kiwanis Kids Day was really nice. So it was really fun getting to perform there because both the marching band and the choir got to perform. The Majesty choir got to perform, and they performed a couple of their songs, and then the band performed the tunes that they played at the Westward Ho Pendleton Roundup Parade, which was interesting. Lots of feces, but very very interesting. But that's all that's been happening at the high school. So.
Thank you, Jalissa. Might be the first time I've heard feces used at a city council meeting, but we all knew what you were talking about. Cow patties, how about that one, or horse patties? The Majesty Choir, they did our national anthem at the spring conference last April, and were very, very good. So if you haven't had an opportunity to see them yet, they're very talented. Yes, Mr. On?
I'm really excited to hear about the students supporting other students, especially the bilingual support. And that is where I want you to realize that that was the concern that came or that was mentioned at the Hispanic Advisory Committee by one of the youth advisors. So that was mentioned. I happen to be also a district employee, but I also realize, that I walk a fine line between my employer or my employment and my representation, as a city council member. But being there, it allowed me to listen to that concern, and I was able to pass it down to the superintendent. So I am glad to see that something came out of that and that something is being implemented. So I just want to say that, it goes to show that the ideas or the concerns that you guys mentioned, the city council and the mayor and the city manager and other people get to know about those concerns. So I appreciate any idea, any input that youth advisors provide.
This program is relatively new, so right now all we have really is a paper with the names of the people that need help and then the topic at the top, and like they write down our names on it, like this person can help with that. But so far it's pretty efficient. I've helped out with math, and compared to how I've seen these same students interact with their teachers, they're a lot more open with questions. So it's like, it doesn't feel tense. It feels like just another day where you're just like talking with your peer about the homework. Like even if I don't have the same class as them, it feels relaxed. It's not like, oh, they have a master's degree. Like I have to respect them and I can't question what they're telling me. But like when I was helping this student, he was like, "Are you sure that's right?" And I said, "I'm not sure that's right. Let's go over it together. Like, let's look at your notes. Like, what has the teacher told you? Like, what did you understand from the lesson?" It's nice because it feels safer than talking to an adult, because I know a lot of times students kind of get scared from the teachers because they think, oh, they're not going to understand me. They might treat me as less. So.
And on top of that, you have a linguistic and a cultural connection, which is something that's totally different. And I think that really does go a long way when students are able to teach students. That's the ultimate in learning. As the learner, you also get a different perspective, and learning from your peers is honestly, I can honestly tell you this as a teacher, students learn more from other students than from me. And so what you guys are doing is great. Keep it up.
Good job, Judith. I have to apologize to Councilor Primer. I forgot he also wanted to speak during our council section. Okay. Mr. Smith.
Yes, so just a few items. Quickly, if you haven't heard, Shears Foods has made the announcement that they will not be coming and rebuilding here. We've talked a little bit about City Hall, but just to add, there was one truckload of furniture unloaded today, probably another 2 tomorrow, so that's moving forward. And the contractor's supposed to be in to continue to finish up the final items. The county also started to move into their space in the basement, so. Wanted to just give the council a heads up. We may be back to you in the next couple of months with some additional IT agreements with some other agencies. We've been approached by a few other agencies that we're going to start talking with about that. You had 2 flyers. This one, Horizon Project Open House, is next week. It'll be while we're at the LOC conference, but if there are those who aren't attending, they might, if you can attend that. They're opening up a new, they're calling it the Steps to Empowerment Program, to give some additional services and opportunities to the IDD community. Let's see, then the second one is Highway 207 is going to go through a restriping process between Madrona and Linda. They're going to add a turn lane to extend back from Madrona all the way back to Linda. This was a conversation we had when ODOT staff came to meet with us, that there was some dangerous situations happening in there, turn movements, things like that. So this is a relatively inexpensive, fix for some of that. So we're hopeful it'll be positive. It will impact. There'll be some loss of on-street parking there, but again, that really is a safety improvement to get some of those vehicles off of 207. So they're supposed to start on Wednesday this week doing the restriping. So then the last item I wanted to, Mayor, you asked me last meeting about goal setting, and so the format we're looking at this year would be a Thursday evening and an all-day Friday, or most of a day Friday, and looking at February 2nd and 3rd, evening of the 2nd onto the 3rd. If that, I'll ask Lily to get with you to make sure that those dates work, but that's what we have Sarah kind of tentatively booked for. If that doesn't work, we'll figure some more dates, but that's what we're looking at.
So it's February 2nd?
It's a Thursday evening, Friday.
3rd, all day.
Yeah.
Okay. The IT agreements
Yes.
that you had mentioned, does that mean additional staff?
Potentially. It depends on the level of those agreements. One of the agencies that is talking to us would probably require another staff person, and it would, their level of service and their payment would kind of justify that, so we can make it work.
So when we hired the IT department, or we created the IT department, were those individuals hired like a regular city staff member would be?
Absolutely.
And so if those IT agreements go away, what happens to those positions?
We would have to lay them off.
Okay. Okay. One thing I forgot to ask, who else going to the conference? So we have to have a delegate vote for us. I know Rod always does it, but I want to make sure that somebody else has the opportunity if they'd like to. Does somebody have a desire to represent us as a voting member at the business meeting? Yeah? You okay with Rod? Yeah? Okay. Can you...
I'll let them know.
Let LSC know that it'll be Rod Harden. That'll be our delegate. Okay? Thank you, Mr. Harden. Anything else, Mr. Smith?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay. So we are going to adjourn the City Council meeting and convene the Urban Renewal Agency meeting with a call to order. We have some business, a facade grant.
Yes, Mr. Spencer has been ill today, so I'll be standing in for him. Improvements at 395 East Main Street property. The overall project cost is estimated at $81,300, and the applicant requested $40,000. The district can provide a match up to 50%, but the normal maximum is $10,000. The Planning Commission can take into account if there's investment of over $75,000 to exceed the 10%, and that's what they have recommended. They've recommended to the council a $40,000 award on this project, and the council can change that, can alter but that's their recommendation. And the scores and all of the information was in your packet, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I just had two questions. Do we have that in budget?
We do.
Okay. The second question, have we ever given an award greater than 10,000?
One other, and that was on the hotel project.
Okay. Right. Okay. Councilor Barone, did you have a question?
I just wanted to comment, thank you for having the scoring sheets this time. The last time that we had this discussion, we didn't, so thank you very much for having them here today.
Okay. Any other questions from the council? Okay. So are there any persons from the audience that would like to comment? All right. Yes, come on up.
Slade Smith, 490 Christensen Loop, Hermiston, and the property owner. I just wanted to answer any questions if there was any.
Does council have any questions, Ms. Schill? We did a very nice job on the sassafras building. Looks very good. So good job to you guys for that. I know $1,000 number. I mean, what? There's a motion here. Is that okay? Is that where we want to go with that, or?
Yeah, I agree with that number.
Okay.
I just have a question on how much we have right now allocated for.
And other than that year that with the hotel, we've never spent the whole budget.
And our budget year goes from June to June, or June to July, July to June. Okay, so we'd be spending 4/5 of our budget with this allocation. Okay. So I hear consensus 40, yeah? Can I get a motion then to
So moved.
approve?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, who was the first?
Mr. Ron.
Yes, okay. I got a motion by Mr. Ron to approve the grant award for the exterior improvements 395 East Main Street in the amount of $40,000. And it was seconded by Councilor Davis. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Congratulations. All right. Any other comments for the Urban Renewal Agency meeting?